Beautiful people, welcome back. We got a lot to talk about. So we just hit that new moon energy, right? New moon in Libra. Very late degree, like 28 degrees, and then now the sun has shifted into Scorpio, right? We also got a lot of planets in Scorpio for that matter, right? And then we also have Neptune, which just went back into Pisces, right? So there's a lot going on energetically that's creating a very different energy. Everybody's experiencing something a little different, but for the most part, I'm gonna do my best to kind of get a collective scope. And of course, if anything resonates, you know what I'm saying, just take that, and the things that you kind of don't resonate with you, either way, leave a comment. You know what I'm saying? Let me know what's going on in your life. Let me know if I'm on point or if it's a little something else going on. But for the most part, we're gonna jump right in. So let me go ahead and pull up the chart, right? Or actually, before I do that, right, let's talk a little bit about what's just going on during this season. So, of course, Scorpio season. Now we're in the middle of the fall, right? So Libra season introduced it. I always look at the cardinal seasons, right? Like Libra, Capricorn, Aries, and Cancer as kind of like decision makers. Depending on what's going on in that season, that's going to kind of set you on a trajectory for that portion, right? And that portion goes like from the cardinal sign to the fixed sign to the mutable. So in this case, we started off in Libra. Now we're going through Scorpio, where we kind of we get into the full ramification of what we chose, right? The full experience of what we chose, and then we go into what's next after a Scorpio Sag, which is where we start to take the lessons that we learn from the experience and we decide how we want to change for the next time, right? So life is constantly going through this three-part cycle, right? Beginning, middle, and end, right? So right now we're dealing with the choices that we've made, or we're getting ready to deal with the choices that we made in Libra season, right? And again, like, one thing I want people to keep in mind too is that that's not necessarily, like, let's say you feel right now today or whenever you watch this, or yeah, you feel as though you made a bad decision here, a bad decision there. You might be feeling negative about your current experience. One thing I want to just reiterate, and this is more so on a spiritual tip, is like, you got to understand, like, part of life is getting out your own mind. Just because you are feeling a certain way right now does not mean that that is the truth. It's just what you're going through at the moment. We kind of been saying for years that you are not your thoughts and feelings. These are things that provide information and insight, right? Your feelings are going to give you the message. Your feelings are going to show you kind of what's for you, what's not, and your thoughts are going to kind of represent different ideas to get you out of a situation, to put you into a situation, and so on and so forth. These things are tools. So you have to understand that, even though, because especially during the fall and winter seasons, what happens is things are flipped and reversed. During the spring and summer, it's almost as if, we still in our feelings, or we still have feelings, right? But it's a lot more of things externally that can distract you from what's going on internally. So this is why the summertime, sometimes people make a lot of mistakes. Say people end up in situationships, people end up, going a little too far in certain areas, getting pregnant. You know what I'm saying? Some people end up in, making bad business decisions, spending their money frivolously, and this is all like, if we want to kind of give an example of this, is like, the summer's here, so you want to go outside and play, but let's say, just for the sake of this example, right, let's say you haven't been tending to your garden, you haven't been planting seeds, you haven't been making sure that the crops that you planted are actually growing sufficiently, right? And this is like a metaphor for taking care of your business, taking care of what you got going on, taking care of yourself in a lot of ways, right? And so when fall comes, when now all of a sudden the sun is not shining as the sun is still shining bright, but the heat is not as much. You're gonna start to feel like there's not as much life in the air, right? And what I mean by that is just like, it's getting cold. It's getting cold, so the air is getting a little drier, and it's getting a little more. It's like, dang, This is where you start to think about things that require you to go internal. This is where things start to slow down, right? Activity is outside, slow down. People stop wanting to go outside because it's cold. I'm gonna be inside with the heat, with the fireplace. So what you start to experience is more time of reflection. And sometimes this hits at different points. Like sometimes people don't realize this until they're, deep into the wintertime and they realize, dang, I spent all of this year not really reflecting and checking in on myself. You're supposed to be kind of doing this all year round. This is supposed to, and this is kind of getting into like, different practices and things like that that you make sure that you keep up to date with yourself. You have to, you really, it goes very deep. Like everything you do in life is some form of a ritual, a prayer, or a spell. You know what I'm saying? So you have to think about your actions and things like that as that. And again, it does not mean that any idea of perfection, or if there's a specific way you're supposed to do that, that's personalized. It's supposed to be personalized for you. However, different doctrines, if you are into a certain religion or whatever you believe in, different spiritual systems, these are things that you can kind of take and use as maybe baselines for what you create for yourself. You know what I'm saying? That's very important to understand. Like I don't lean on the side of demonizing religious groups or anything like that, because to me it's like that, we are all essentially trying to do the same thing, which is understand ourselves better. So how a person chooses to do that, you could judge if you want, but at the end of the day, you have to, I don't know, me, I'm a little different. I have a little empathy for people who are trying to find their way, because, I've been in situations I'm trying to find my way too, and putting different things together to see what works for me as an individual. I feel like other people are doing that now. However, how a person goes about that and whether or not it is in conflict with you, that's a different conversation. If someone is trying to impose their shit on you, then you might have to go to war. It's not all kumbaya on this side. At the same time, boundaries got to be put in place, and you got to know where you going, and you got to make sure that others stay in their lane. And that's a different conversation. Also, you know, do your part to make sure that bad information is not continuously spread. But sometimes, you can't control that all the time. You can't control what another person chooses to talk about on their platform. You know what I'm saying? So all of that trolling and even hating and shit like that, I mean, what can you do? Like, I mean, after a while, you got to decide if that's even worth your energy, what I'm saying, to be cussing somebody out online or something like that. It's like at a certain point of awareness, you got to be like, well, what am I doing with my energy? If I'm spending all my energy talking shit about what I think somebody is wrong about, it's kind of like that whole thing where you pointing outward, but, people don't be pointing inward at what work they need to be doing so that they can make sure that they're doing their part to put out the type of things that they want others to know about whatever's going on. And don't that doesn't mean go on your platform and start talking shit about everybody else. That means, like, what are you actually doing in the world to create impact? Are you connecting with people in real life? Because community and things like that unfortunately suffer the more and more we get more technological advances, and we kind of start to understand the kind of there's a lot of strength, man. It goes real deep. I saw something interesting about how they were talking about how, it was talking about social security and like retirement, and it brought up an interesting point about it's funny because it was a video talking about some, I think, life insurance, right? And or the topic has shifted into insurance. It was like talking about real estate stuff, but it shifted into life insurance and understanding, like, when these people get to a certain age. And I think it was talking about the government shutdown, right? Which is a very interesting point too that I kind of want to jump into as well. Things to be aware of, because you got to pay attention to what's going on, not so much the what they're telling you is going on, but the underlying message, which in this case, right, you talk about the government shutdown, government workers out of a job, right? So you got a lot of people who are kind of just floating around right now trying to make some shake. There's going to be people who figure it out, and then there's going to be people who don't, right? Who end up in very compromising situations, and there's going to be people who panic, who make very irrational decisions at the moment, right? So different things at play, right? Also, SNAP benefits. So you see, okay, the people who I remember growing up too, I had a government job at one point, and they used to talk about it like, having a government job is one of the most secure jobs you could have, right? In this case, it's like, oh shit, not really, you know what I'm saying? Because if the government shuts down, which I don't know about y'all. I didn't even know that was a thing until, 2020. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know that I mean, of course I wasn't super tapped into what's going on politically and stuff like that. I mean, I listen, I pay attention, but I didn't know something to that extreme could happen where, no, the government has shut down and stuff like that. It probably happened before in history and stuff like that, but I didn't, again, as a person coming up in my 30s right now, I'm like, okay, that's a thing, but my point is, right, the underlying kind of narrative is threatening people's security, the people who they thought they was the most secure, the people who are up under the current or the old, I should say, outdated government system. Um, and again, this more so applies to the people on SNAP benefits because the SNAP benefits, that's people who are, again, that's food stamps and things like that. So these are already people who are making a certain, this is attacking, and not even, I don't want to say attacking because attack I don't know, comes with a lot of other connotations or, connotations with it. I just mean like these are the people being, I guess, attacked, but I really want to say like targeted. These are the people being kind of like emphasized and put on a public display to show you like, hey, too much reliance on the government is going to put you in in a compromising situation where you may not be able to feed your family or, do what you kind of need to do in whatever regards as you relying on this government. When the government shutdown to me represents the old system kind of showing you, it's almost like before we completely get rid of something, we're gonna phase something out to show you kind of like how it could, to kind of, in the same regard as the government is constantly, or it's not just the government, but people in power understand that the way to stay in power is to always give the people you're trying to control something to do and something to worry about. Basically, if they can keep you busy with something to do, well, then you don't have really enough time to question a lot. Even if you do question it, it's like you still got to do what you are conditioned to do. So even if you do question it, there's only so much time or so far you could go with that line of questioning. It's in order to get it done you have to really be focused, and again, focus is another thing that they attack, right? So, or that they use against people, right? Entertainment is one of the most powerful tools to, because basically with entertainment, when you're watching something that's entertaining to you, when you see something, right, like what's the best way to people, right, you ever been in a group of friends, right, or who you think are your friends, and somebody say something slick but they make it a joke, or they say, oh, I'm just kidding, and it's like, sometimes it's just jokes, but sometimes it's like, nah, that was a jab, and you feel it. So it's like the what they say, giving the candy with the medicine or the juice with the medicine. You know what I'm saying? Or the not so much, but in this case it's not juice, it's not medicine, it's poison. So they give you a little juice with the poison. So you think it, again, same even down to the food, you know what I'm saying? Or the food, all kinds of chemicals in it, but it tastes good. Or they make you think it tastes good based upon what they put in it. That's actually just addictive and over like an overdose almost, like it gets you hooked. That's the same thing. People do in the streets when they trying to, get somebody to become a recurring customer, trying to get somebody addicted to something. So they're gonna sell them the first pack free because they know you're gonna come back. You know what I'm saying? So they're gonna give you some food with a bunch of this bullshit in it that is destroying you internally, but it tastes so good that I just gotta order another plate of fries. I just gotta order another, plate of wings. I just gotta get these, this snack at the store, you know what I'm saying? The worst snack for you, you know what I'm saying? Like, what was we eating? Like fruit by the foot or something like that. Look at this, it got red dye, uh, all kinds of crazy names for stuff that is just like, damn, okay, what's going on? But so just that's now. That being said, we also got the conversations. Don't forget that we got cryptocurrency trying to find a way in. And then and the thing is, that's the thing. This is the same pattern with everything. When they're trying to introduce new things, see all the chaos that it feels like the world is going through. It's really just, again, trying to maintain control, giving you something to do that is almost like can never be done. AKA, I mean, the most, I guess, general example is you having a job that is like has no other purpose but to pay your bills, which bills come every 30 days, right? So it's kind of like they already gave us something to do over and over again, a never-ending cycle of trying to climb a ladder that doesn't even that really you'll never get to the top. You know what I'm saying? Unless there is like a way to be in a position in which you're comfortable, but this requires you to transcend class, and that's kind of a different conversation, right? And transcending class is basically you got to look at class not so much as how much you make, but it's kind of like the conversation of wealth, or what you own, right? What you own, because ownership is kind of the difference between classes. Those on the lower class, right? And no offense, I'm speaking candidly. I'm just trying to get the knowledge and information out. And also remember this channel is all about empowerment. So when you're hearing me say this is so you got the game to know what you might need to switch up in your life, or what you need to hit the gas pedal on, right? And I'm learning along with y'all. I'm expanding my experience. That's my new shit. Expanding my experience, because as soon as I hit, man, it's funny. I'm gonna make a video specifically about this, but like, every now and then you just be thinking you know something, and then you realize, man, I don't know nothing. That's why everything I'm slowing down with everything, and not to stop, ain't shit stopping, but just understanding more dynamics. And when you see more of the playing field, then you realize you got to up your strategy and shit like that. So that's what's going on with me. But it's not about, well, it's about us. You know what I'm saying? Let's just make it about us. It's all about us as individuals. I'm here, like I said, with y'all. So, because I want to be with the people. You know what I'm saying? That's where I belong. I belong with the people. But getting back to my point, the difference between class and wealth is what you own. You know what I'm saying? Because ownership, it puts you in a position, and it's like it's funny, it's ironic, because it's almost like you're taking on, you got to understand, like, well, I don't want to get too complicated, but let's just keep let me stay on point. So the difference between class is what you own. And a lot of people in the lower class don't own anything, or the things that they do own are not assets, liabilities. Y'all know, classic conversation, assets and liabilities. A liability is a real nice car that depreciates in value, has no real, it's not really going to get you, it's not going to appreciate in value over time versus a house. A house is an asset. House immediately, depending on where you are, but it's going to appreciate. So when you go back to sell it, it's an investment that pays you back if you do it right, right? And especially if you look at certain communities, that be the thing. The things that they own are all the things that don't necessarily appreciate in value, or the things that they were given and shown to represent wealth, but honestly don't at all, like a big ass chain or something like that. Like, and again, like I understand the culture. Like I'm not critiquing culture. Culture is different. See, it's a cultural significance to have a big ass chain, right? And that's fine. But on the other end of things, it's almost like you gotta. This is where balance is needed. And I think even down talking about community, different communities, because this is not just directed toward one race group or one group of people. This is widespread. See, part of understanding the world is understanding, okay, what culture was I born into? What cultures do I resonate with, right? Because see, depending on how you want to live life, You know, some people just want to live life in the culture they were grown up in, right? Those are, every like this is kind of getting into a deeper aspect of things. Everybody got their own pathway. So I can't tell everybody like you have to be open-minded, you have to be broad and accept all. I think that's the wrong rhetoric. Like it's like sometimes people just want to be in the culture they in and they don't care about what's going on outside of that. And that's what their pathway is about. That's what their time on earth in this lifetime is about. And maybe they'll change their mind later on, maybe not, right? I still think we can have a healthy world if people, but people have to know themselves first. And part of knowing yourself is to know, okay, do I even have the capacity to learn about more cultures? Because let's say, just for an example, somebody might be born into their culture and their experience in this lifetime is about learning about that, just that. Not everybody has to be so, open-minded. I know as an open-minded person myself, when I was especially younger, I was like, everyone needs to be open-minded and we got to open everyone's mind and everybody got to be woke. Everybody ain't gotta be woke. I honestly, I think it's better. It's better if only the people who are meant to be woke are woke to kind of shed light on a broader scale. Because the thing about it is, think about it like this, purely for an example, right? The culture I was born into, right? I look like how I look. So let's say I come across a person who just wants to be locked in to the culture that I was born into as well, right? I can reach them and in very small increments expand their horizon because they see how I'm moving around other cultures or things I incorporate into my flow with different cultures and stuff like that. And if they're watching me, right? Or somebody like me, that's their part of learning about the world and becoming well-rounded. And then that same goes for everybody. Because again, the beautiful thing about social media and content creators is the fact that you can find anybody can find someone that looks like them who comes from a culture that they was born into, right? And I'm using culture kind of like interchangeably, real loosely, right? Because I'm kind of alluding to race, I'm kind of alluding to whatever. You could be your orientation, your sexual orientation. It could be whatever it is. You can find somebody who got your idea, like that look like you, talk like you, think like you, but it's also kind of a representative of an individual with an open mind, getting grabbing new things to introduce you to through content. That's kind of one of the good things I see about social media, right? I don't think any of these things are just bad. And one thing you got to keep in mind, especially during this time, is that you cannot have the good without the bad. So don't go around thinking that, oh, because everything is in chaos, it's all bad, and I don't ever get where I'm trying to go. Don't also think that is ever going to be a time where everything is just all good, because when things get good, there's still bad around the corner. And I'm not saying that to incite fear. I'm saying that to create equilibrium and to kind of like, this is the part of life in which you got to grow up about, right? I'm talking about being an adult, like a spiritual adult, is understanding and accepting that everything kind of is in duality. Like there's never going to be a time of just complete flatline. And if there is, and see, the thing about it is, what I mean by that flatline, there is equilibrium that does exist, but the equilibrium comes in the dance, knowing how to dance. And see, everybody got their own BPM, beats per minute, their own rhythm. Everybody got their own rhythm that they have to understand. And also that gets into relationships as well, because part of relationships, and this is a lot of the lessons coming through from Libra season, right? Which is kind of shifting us into understanding this new moon. It's like rhythm. Sometimes you and an individual, you might like them, but y'all not in the same rhythm, right? Or even different things in your life, right? People, places, and things. It's like you might like a lot of stuff, but are you relating to it in a harmonious rhythm? Or is the rhythm kind of a little offbeat a little bit? I think I might have talked about this before in a previous video recently, but again, Libra is all about that the music, it says Venusian, and Venus I think is still in Libra as well. I'm about to pull up the chart in a second, but I just kind of wanted to give that. And what I was saying, let me finish my point too, talking about what I was talking about with the life insurance stuff. So a lot of elders are very like when we talk about some of these like kind of traps set out, like it's a cold game, you know what I'm saying? The way that the system is set up. We've been knowing that, but like, you really think about it, man. Like, especially think about it now. Like people can't, people are already living check to check, right? The retirement funds and all that basically is dried up. Like, I mean, it's you and then it gets very expensive for elderly care, senior care. Like that's a, they be needing all kinds of medication at times, right? And again, you thinking about people who have gone years eating the wrong stuff, dealing, these jobs that have you sitting down 24/7, not exercising, life going, stresses, all of these things is going to guarantee that, these seniors and elders end up with an illness that's going to require them to pay, you know what I'm saying? Or, you got different family dynamics. Sometimes people want to put these people in homes and stuff like that, senior care facilities and stuff. But see, the thing about it is, seniors are very vulnerable, you know what I'm saying? These are like, what they say, we start off as vulnerable children and babies and grow up, become self-sufficient, become adults and have our own kids, but then we need someone to take care of us at the end. It's like that kind of like bell curve. We start here, we go up, and then we decline, you know what I'm saying? And elders be declining. And again, it ties back into class, because depending on a person's class, that's going to determine even your lifespan to a degree. You know what I'm saying? Like, we got a lot of people, especially if you're talking about the black community, our elders be passing away, right? Like 60, you know what I'm saying? 60, average wise. I don't know the actual average, but, depending on where you and not just black communities, but more so like lower income communities, that lifespan get a little shorter. You get some of them major diseases, so like diabetes, hypertension, or what I'm saying, all these different things that'll take a person out right at that age, like late 50s and 60s, versus if you in a you in a higher class, you can kind of extend that to like 80 plus, you know what I'm saying? But it's crazy, and that's like a statistic. Apologize, I don't have all the numbers. One day I'll have a booklet with notes and stuff like that and be able to hit, cite sources and stuff. But for the most part, my point remains, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's rough. And so, but see the irony in this and the solution in this, it goes back to community. Because if, first of all, elders are not respected, and it's like, we understand, because like, as when I was growing up, that was the thing, the conversation. Elders was kind of being a lot more negative about certain things that they didn't understand, right? So this is a two-part thing, right? Relationships a two-way street. So it's like, as you get older, you have to understand that you need to start to put yourself in more of a position and role to teach. Even if you feel as though nobody listening or the kids not listening, find some kids who are willing to listen. But also understand that to be listened to, you have to have done something in your life significant. Now, living itself is going to give you some wisdom, but we all know them 60 plus year olds who really ain't like, it's almost like they missed the points, and they still kind of like trying to learn themselves and stuff. And that's, hey, that's life. You're going to have people on different levels and stuff like that. So, you got to know your position. But if you getting older in age, start trying to take some of that wisdom and pour it back into the community, pour it back into the young people, you know what I'm saying? Pour that back into the young people, right? What they say, learn, earn, and return, you know what I'm saying? So you in that return phase. By that second Saturn return, literally you in that return phase, right? 30s to 60, I feel like that's your earning phase. That's when you need to turn it up. You need to be earning as much as you can at that time. You need to be, grinding, hustling, not to the point it destroys you, but you have to be putting it all on the line. That's your life. 30 is very young, 40 is very young, 50 is young. for real, you older young, but you seasoned, you a little, but you know, you still have tons and tons of wisdom or tons and tons of energy and time, you know, to get out there and actually do something worthwhile. So, you know, you need to, you know, do that. So because see, again, you have to understand like in order for the cycle to kind of be repaired, because right now what you have is because of not so many communities, you don't really have, you know, a lot of individuals like you get a lot of people looking for guidance, you know, and a lot of one of the reasons that these elders are not being respected is because they're not putting themselves in a respectable position a lot of times. Like it's hard to kind of listen to a person that's not, first of all, is not doing something that you want to do, or is not presenting themselves as if they are an authority in anything. They haven't done anything, or they are not, you know, yeah, carrying themselves as such. They're just yelling at you, trying to tell you something. No, that's the first time that's the first way to get shut down. I don't want to hear what you got to say, you know, versus, you know, but kind of going back to, you know, versus, you know, you being compassionate and patient and having a little bit of the experience, even if it's a little bit of experience. I did a little bit of this, but it's like you got to think, man, after 50 plus years, you got something you've done that you can see another person doing that you can, you know, pour into them. And, you know, again, you might not get the reception that you want, but that's not the point. You know what I'm saying? And this kind of goes back into duty. You know, people have lost touch with, and see, that's what I feel like community instills is like it's natural because you feel like your responsibility is to support those in your community and things like that, your village and whoever you around and stuff like that. You start to, you know, this is how we get closer to the and try to. I'm not trying to because certain phrases and stuff take people to certain places mentally, and it's not what I'm saying. Like, oh, we're all one, but there should be some kind of camaraderie or seeing one's humanity in another. We are all in some form reflections. So even the parts that we don't like in other people, we might represent some of those things, or we might have come from certain aspects of those things, right? And again, this doesn't mean there's not no kumbaya. Everybody ain't got a mesh, but there is a certain baseline of those who understand, like, yo, there is, you know, we share humanity, and so there is somewhat of a responsibility for us to, you know, again, we ain't got to be buddy buddy, we ain't got to do everything together, we ain't got to, you know, even, you know, kick it for experience extended periods of time. However, I don't have to destroy you. You know, I don't have to, we don't have to create more disharmony, more distractions, more pain, more suffering amongst each other. We can instead figure out, either decide that we're going to operate on two different ends, or we could figure out how to build, you know what I'm saying? But again, everything duality, and some things got to get destroyed, you know? It's the way it goes. But that's a different conversation. I don't want to get too deep into that. But understanding that you know, the elders' role has been lost, and mainly is because we don't have any real community set. Because think about it, if we had a functioning community, when a person gets to a certain age, we wouldn't need to get them, send them to a home. You know how that's it's kind of fucked up. You know what I'm saying? To send a you know, I get it. Sometimes the elders abusive, or you know, has their ways and stuff like that, so you just be like, man, to hell with them, send them off, you know. Hey, look, in extreme situations and circumstances, I'm not telling nobody was right or wrong in any real circumstance for real, but I will say, if you have a respectable elder, or you looking at your parents as they get older, right? Because I'm 30, so my parents, you know, they're not there, but it's gonna happen, you know what I'm saying? So, and even if you younger, you in your 20s or your teens, it's like, you know, your parents are young and vibrant now, but you will start to see them slow down at some point. And you never know when someone's gonna get sick, you know, or get injured and things like that. Life, you know, when death call, this it's a call you can't ignore, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, and again, it's Scorpio season, so I ain't even gonna apologize for making the vibe what it is, you know. But y'all know, you know, that's why I put on the yellow. I was like, I gotta offset some of this deep shit because it get deep, you know. But that's what we dealing with. That's the reality. That's the type of things that. this season should, not specifically be putting on your mind, but you should be thinking about your choices and why you're in the situations you in and kind of what played a part in that, and Libra is kind of like, how like the stories of Mayat, keeping your heart light as a feather and things like that, right? All of those kind of just allude to being able to, it's kind of creating inward uh equilibrium, being able to look at things and be like, okay, you know, let me balance some of these things out, even emotional things like the new moon. It's interesting because now, so the new moon started and it was void, right? So when a moon comes in, first of all, void just means it's not really, it's a time of rest. It's a time of pause and reflection, right? Because it's not really active. It's out of the loop, right? You know what I'm saying, in a sense. So when, kind of like how the new moon hit, hopefully you didn't do anything that was too reactionary. Hopefully you took a moment to just sit and be quiet. Sit, be quiet. Even now, I think now the moon just kind of got back into its rhythm. So it's like, you know, these next couple new moons are going to kind of be like that, right? Kind of coming in at the very end of a season. So it's almost like you're starting a new emotional journey after you've gone through a portion of the season, after you've gone through a certain portion of the experience of being in that sign and that energy, right? So we kind of went through all the Libra season just to come to a conclusion on like, okay, this is where the balance is, right? And then moving into Scorpio, this is where we start to, now we have to discern what's needed to release in order to get that balance that we want. You know what I'm saying? And so this is kind of what we're dealing with right now, loss. And maybe a bit of grieving, right? But the grieving does not have to overtake you. It comes in waves, but as waves come, waves go. So you have to, again, emotional. It's a lot of energy in Scorpio. Matter of fact, let me go ahead and pull up the perfect time to pull up the chart. Yeah. Okay. So we got a lot of energies right here in Scorpio, right? Late degree Scorpio too, right? So, we got Mars. Mars has been there. So Mars should have already kind of had you thinking about yourself a little bit deeper. It shares the same planet, it's the ruler of, Mars is the ruler. Mars is the ruler, and it's also the ruler of Aries, right? So these deal with identity, but on two different levels. The identity, the persona, is like the Aries. That's the what you expressing in kind of your first thought. Then there's the deeper aspect of that. That's kind of where you hold a lot of your trauma, maybe even resentment, this fixed water. So this is holding on to emotions, right? So we have to constantly understand how our energy is being altered by what we still holding on to. And we need to understand and learn the cycle of how to flush that out, basically, like water. When water is still, a lot of things happen. That's how you get a swamp, still water. So you have to understand, okay, is my inner world swampy at the moment? Are there things I'm holding on to that's accumulating bacteria and unnecessary fungus and unnecessary, things that is creating murky water? Because see, when you got murky water, it's harder for you to connect. It's almost impossible for you to connect. And after a while, you could start to suffer, you could start to drown in your own unflushed just emotional baggage and shit like that. So you have to consider like where those things need to be flushed out and flushed out in order to make space for something new. And again, the releasing part, the thing that makes kind of this season very intense is because you're having to release the things that you might have thought at one point was was right. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has that type of experience. But the thing about it is that's just the lesson that Scorpio comes with, is understanding the release, understanding like, okay, if I hold on to this, it actually will kill me. You know what I'm saying? I have to release this. And so the higher octave is accept, is kind of be on the end of in a sense, accepting what needs to now be transformed, And again, transform, it's going to feel like a loss, but it's really just a transition. So don't look at it so much as you lost something. Look at it as, oh, that had to transition into something else in my life. You know what I'm saying? Kind of, even the concept of like, okay, this door has closed, but there's by just natural law, there has to be another door that opens. And so part of the kind of key right now is to sit with yourself long enough for that other door to present itself. Because sometimes, especially with all the chaos that we see, right? And this is kind of another thing that happens. We get caught up in what's going on outside, so we start to try to, it's like we might not do it on purpose, but if you watching the news all day and it's a bunch of chaos, you going to instinctively, subconsciously start to match the energy of what you see, what you've been ingesting, right? And all the other distractions. And then before you know it, you moving too fast for you to just sit your ass down. Like you moving too fast to see the door open. You just need to sit your ass down and hold on for a second, because in that all that panic and all that chaos, you're gonna just grab any door, and then there you go, right back in the same bullshit that you just got out of. And see, a lot of that to me is kind of like this Neptune and Pisces going back. See, this Neptune and Pisces could have fucked a lot of things up for you on the surface as far as what you see, aka it puts you in a space where the thing that you was dreaming about almost looks so attainable, and you might have really thought this was the time, and then it slipped back into Pisces and you realize, oh, that was an illusion too. But again, take if you take a pause though, you start to realize that no, it's not that it was an illusion. It's just how you was looking at it might not have been the way that it was meant to come to you. So again, this could be a time in which a lot of people revert back to old ways because they don't understand that no, the changes you made was the right changes, but the thing in which in reality you thought you was grasping wasn't actually the thing you was grasping. You was actually reaching for something else. So it's like, take a minute just to kind of see for yourself kind of what that lesson was, and you might find that you're a lot closer to that thing that you always wanted, that dream. But it just, you have to flow. You have to understand that your mind, you have to allow your mind to change, right? And even though, like, that's the thing too, even though your mind might change, when you know yourself, there's still a focal point. And so, but you have to allow sometimes you have to allow the fluidity of what's going on in reality. You have to allow that to kind of pass through to be able to show and reveal what it is that you're supposed to be, involved in. And see, this is not a passive practice. A lot of this is an active practice, which means that you are in the experience. You are participating with the things that are presented to you. If you're not participating, guess what? You're going to be on the sidelines for the rest of your life, for your entire life, I should say. Not for the rest, because you can always make the choice to get involved. But a lot of times people, again, because they're overstimulated or they're afraid, they become stagnant. They procrastinate, and then they panic. Procrastination, panic cycle. That should be killing people. And like I'm an example of that too. That's one of my flaws. I procrastinate, then panic. And then it's like in the panic, you make a lot of mistakes, and those mistakes come back to bite you at times in which you're supposed to already have what you it would have had if you did what you were supposed to do at that time. So I know a lot of people deal with that, but that's a lot of that Neptune and Pisces energy as well. And we got Saturn back in Pisces. So this might start to feel, you might start to feel like, damn, the same restrictions that I was dealing with a year ago or 2 years ago, 4 years ago is right back in my face. But the difference now is it should be a lot more awareness, a lot more to work with. Don't lose sight of the things that you do have available to you at the moment to get you to that next level, because you might just be thinking too hard about it. And chances are that's what's happening, because this is very much a different time. So even though it might look like the same restrictions is right back in your face, you gotta think out the box. You gotta think out the circle. I'm gonna say you gotta think out the circle, because this little transit circle, you know what I'm saying, be getting people fucked up. You be thinking you stuck in this little cycle. It's like you gotta think outside the cycle. And that requires vision. You got to be able to see where you actually trying to go with stuff and then come back into yourself and use your willpower to change courses. And it's constantly going to be getting hit with things that try to pull you right back. But you gotta be on it. You gotta use and see, this is what Mars is all about. You gotta dig deep into something that transcends anything somebody could throw at you to throw you off, anything in reality that's trying to tell you it's one way. This is where Mars is exalted in Capricorn, because Capricorn is not just an earth sign that deals with what it has. Capricorn is the innovator. Capricorn is the bulldozer. Capricorn is the force that's going to change and shift. It's the earthquake that's going to create faults and create gaps in the ground just to get where it's trying to go. You feel what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying? And when you put Mars there, some again, volcanic. You know what I'm saying? You know how crazy, like when you look at a volcano, look at that. That's like, you know how much force had to happen for the crevice to you know what I'm saying? To be positioned that way, to take a mountain and position it upright and things like that. You know what I'm saying? It's powerful. So, Mars right now is in such a powerful position. And we got Mercury too in late degrees of Scorpio. So we already been thinking deeply about ourselves and our situation, right? Now the moon has been in Scorpio. So now we might start to be feeling the full emotional whether it's impact or the emotional just the full vibration of what we're actually up against and what we are gearing ourselves to kind of embark on for the next 30 days. Because going into Scorpio season, and it's not all scary, it's not all spooky, it's just a deepening, a deepening of things, you know what I'm saying? Getting deeper with these different things that we're participating in with when it comes to life and stuff. And so, your life right now, it might feel, again, everybody in different circumstances. So let's say you in a position where you feel like your back is against the wall. A lot of people might feel like they gotta get more out of life, but they feel like they're at their limit. And the thing about it is, don't think that you need to work harder. It's a matter of working more strategically, understanding where to place your energy to get a better result. And see, one thing that we can lean on to start to figure this out, right? We have this amazing water trine, grand water trine, right? We got Mars, we got at the moment, we got, oh yeah, let's say we got Mars, Mercury, right? The moon a little bit, but it's moving into Sag, but we got Mars, Mercury, Neptune now, Saturn, even the North Node and Jupiter, all in water signs. So that's our willpower, how we're thinking about our willpower, how we're thinking in general, and our ability to kind of communicate. And I say kinda because it's in water, deep water. So we might be talking to ourselves a lot more right now in deep reflection, right? And we got Saturn figuring out the structure. We got the North Node kind of like showing us our destiny when we reflect. And we got Neptune kind of bringing a certain uh mystical, magical energy. Again, hey, this shit is possible. You can change your life, but you just have to focus. And that's what Scorpio is really good at. That's what Scorpio helps Pisces with. So that's kind of what I see through this trine. Trying to, if your mind is in the right place, and basically having your mind in the right place is just focusing on yourself, honestly, focusing on yourself and understanding what you want to do, where you want to go. And again, you might not know off the bat right now, but take the time to reflect on it. Take the time to sit by some water or just sit in some quiet place and reflect on where do I feel like I want to go. And then you got Jupiter, this beautiful Jupiter right here in Cancer, exalted at that matter. So for that matter. So it's there's a lot of wisdom that we know that's stored in our emotions and feelings. But if you're not sitting with your emotions and feelings, you might not understand that. You might not connect with that. And again, that's going to look like you may be being on in a space isolated a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be complete recluse. You don't have to be a hermit, but it is a form of, hey, you might need to get away from everyone else's thoughts and feelings so you can figure out what's on your mind and what's on your heart so that you can go where you want to go, right? And one of the things that's kind of creating some challenges for us as well is Lilith right here. kind of making it seem a little bit more scary than it is. But trust, like sit with yourself a little bit. You know, this could create a lot of panic in individuals, Lilith and Scorpio, even though I think it's a powerful position too, because Lilith and Scorpio energy kind of go hand in hand, but a person can go overboard trying to be manipulative because they don't know how to think for themselves. They're trying to think of themselves through other people or do what they want to do through other people because they don't feel comfortable or powerful enough to do it for themselves. So be mindful too of people like that. Sometimes you really do gotta cut a person off or before they can even get started. You know, we also have this Uranus in 0 degrees. So, that's kind of that the moon is going to pass through an opposition with that, right? It's already kind of feeling that influence a little bit. So, right now, you might not necessarily feel as comfortable as you want as an individual. You might not feel like you got all the resources there or that you know enough. But that's where you got to ask yourself, hey, does it make sense to trust myself? Yeah, I'm gonna say, does it make sense to trust myself? Even though I feel like you should always feel like you can trust yourself. But I think the reality is that sometimes you don't feel like you can trust yourself. So if you feel like that, you should ask yourself why. And the answer probably will show you what you need to start to focus on now in order to rebuild that relationship with yourself, which that Venus in Libra, I know Venus loves to be in Libra, but right now Venus is having a different kind of conversation. Venus is not trying to be so outside. Venus is actually trying to, I feel like in this case, Venus is calling you to actually get a better relationship together with yourself because you got Venus right here, right? But we also got Pluto still 1 degrees in Aquarius, and it went direct not too long ago. So there's a forward motion in the way we got to transform how we even conducting ourselves publicly. Because don't forget, Aquarius is still that 11th house, that public arena. And it gets to community. Community is when you find your selected group, right? When you start to construct your group or get involved in group dynamics or networking. But we have to lead the way in that transformation. That's not something that's just gonna fall in your lap. You can end up in a community, but that's because you didn't take the initiative. Right now you have the power to take the initiative to engage in the type of relationships that you want. But see, the thing about it is, first you got to establish the relationship with yourself, right? That's first and foremost, because otherwise you're just gonna be making a lot of mistakes. Otherwise, you're just gonna be getting involved in a lot of things that don't go nowhere, you know. And it kind of even goes back to, it's funny too, like I've been saying like, making sure your beliefs are your own. Because what you're gonna start to see as well, what you've been seeing already, is a lot of groupthink. People get around people who they feel comfortable with, and you still gotta have your own discernment. You know what I'm saying? You can agree with a certain group of people, but you have to have your own mind within that. If you just going along with what somebody else say because it sounds good, then you're gonna find yourself in a very uncomfortable situation later in life, right? And the thing about the irony is you can't see it now. You can't see it now. But before you start to big yourself up and start to attack somebody else on behalf of what your group is saying is the right thing to attack, please, for the love of God, make sure that you know what you're doing, you know, because I see a lot of people kind of putting themselves in compromising positions, but they just can't see it yet. And again, I'm not one to judge because I'm like, hey, everybody living their life. And everybody is liable, everybody is going to make a mistake or two. Everybody's going to make a miscalculation or two. So, hey, but just for the sake of the conversation and you thinking about your own situation, you have to really, right now is such a powerful time to just get back clear with where you want to go, where you want to be at, and how you want to start to live, and it's very watery. So it's going to feel emotional, but during emotional times, you need to check in with yourself. I get it. Like a lot of times we might be real focused on our bread, money, and trying to hustle. We might be super like engaged in some kind of relationship or some partnership, trying to make sure something else could work for us. We might be real excited about what we want to express. But at the end of the day, we need to slow down and reflect and listen a little bit more, not necessarily to other people, but to ourselves. What are we saying about how we feel and where we trying to go? Again, back to what I said in the very beginning, the emotions are not you, but they're your tools because how you feel is going to determine what how you're reacting on a base level to what's going on in front of you. That's what the feelings do. If you feel an anxiety, you feel okay, that anxiousness, there's a solution for that. You don't have to adopt the feeling of anxiety. You don't have to say, I am anxious. You could just say, okay, I feel anxiety. And then now you could look at it as information. Okay, my emotion at the moment is a tool showing me what is going on with my nervous system at the moment. My nervous system is triggered in this way. Let me go ahead and do what I need to do to alleviate that, which, in this case, the answer for anxiety is okay, I might be thinking too much about the future. And there might be something in the present I need to give my energy to that can help alleviate that. If I get my shit done in the present, I'll probably feel better and less anxious. And if I don't, well, at least I got all my shit handled. You know what I'm saying? At least I got my things handled. So that's just me tripping. I ain't got nothing to worry about if everything handled in the present. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes we have to reparent ourselves as well emotionally. You might get triggered and have anxiety attacks because of how your parent used to treat you or talk to you. And you just gotta reparent yourself to, hey, I'm not in trouble. I'm a grown up. You know what I'm saying? Gotta remind yourself, I am not in trouble. I'm not in trouble. I'm not missing out on anything. I'm not slipping. You know what I'm saying? Just calm down. So, and that's technique for that, getting back into your breathing. You know what I'm saying? Making sure, we have to take care of ourselves. And I think that a lot of that taking care of yourself is kind of like, what this Jupiter and Cancer could be kind of bringing back up for you is like, hey, let's put better wise decisions and wise practices in caring for ourselves, because the better we care for ourselves, in turn, that becomes the better we can care for others, if it even gets that far. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, yeah, but that's kind of the whole point, because at some point you're going to engage back with others, or if you feel like you by yourself right now, at some point you're going to engage with others. That's just the world we live in. There's no such thing as a person not engaging with people, even if a lot of people kind of wear that as a badge of honor. Like, oh, I'm by myself. I'm cool. I don't need nobody. And it's like, you a damn lie. Even if you move and live life like that, I know you cry at night. I know you cry at night, lonely, and it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Not calling nobody weak. Sometimes we got to go through times in which that's the case. But it's how you navigate that and what you learn through that and what you should be learning at times like that. Sometimes the universe got to put you through that situation so you not only learn about yourself, but you care more about yourself later on. Because when you don't really care about yourself, or let's say you care about yourself, but you don't, there's other ways in which you haven't been caring about yourself, and so you throw your love around, you throw your body around, you throw your mind around, you just mixing and mingling with everybody, and then you come home and you feel alone. That loneliness is not to destroy you. There's nothing wrong with you. You just got to sit with yourself for a second and understand it's time for me to care for me. Because when you come back to your home, and I understand not everybody might have a home where they could do this, but home is within you. You got to understand when you come back to your home, aka wherever you are alone, there's supposed to be a replenishing or refreshing energy there. You're supposed to be like, thank God I'm back to myself, you know. But it take time to get there, because you might get there. Again, we all gonna feel lonely at times. But when you get that loneliness, understand that you got to put the A in front of it. And part of putting the A in front of it is in the moments like where it's hard to be alone or it's hard to be lonely, or when it's hard to be alone, and so you feel lonely, right? In those times, allow those emotions to come through, but let's assess what's actually passing through. And through the assessment, at some point, we're gonna have to start to redirect the flow of emotions and how we feel about ourselves, right? Because what you start to do when you alone, when you're alone and feeling lonely, after you assess, okay, in my loneliness, what are the things that I'm feeling? So it might be certain ways you're thinking about yourself. You know, it might be fear. "Oh, I'll never be connected with someone again. I'll never be this or that." Okay, well, assess that. Like, okay, well, where's that come from? You know what I'm saying? You have to, and again, like, look, if you need a therapist, that's what therapists are really supposed to do. They really more so to help facilitate the conversation that you should be having with yourself. Sometimes people don't know where to go internally. They haven't had enough practice. Nobody really can teach you this. This is something that you either innately understand because you've been here enough times, or you had sometimes people have friends that are able to kind of play this role. That's the beauty of life, man. That's why, like, stop walking around like people are evil. Stop walking around like humans are not important, because again, even the principle, you can learn something from anyone. Doesn't mean you should all the time listen to everybody, but what I mean is you never know when a conversation with another human being is going to just spark something to show you something that you wouldn't have been able to see if you was just a recluse by yourself, not talking to anybody. Even scrolling on Twitter and shit like that. Somebody will say something. Again, not every tweet is intelligent, but when you got a good level of discernment, every now and then somebody will say something that will spark an idea. That's just I appreciate shit like that. Like, some people be just hating everything. I'm like, it's just that's dumb. It's dumb to just hate everything. It's again duality. There's things you can't hate within stuff, but everything is everything. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, my point being, that's that. And again, sometimes you need therapy, and the needing therapy thing. That stigma. Not everybody needs it, because, like I said before, sometimes there's a space in which people can use therapy and even the people in their life to avoid doing the work themselves. At some point, even with a therapist, you have to do the work. That's where people kind of get messed up. Like, you have to do the work though. You can't just meet once a week and then go home and still be on bullshit. And they come back and complain about the bullshit just so they can unravel. And it's like at the end of the session, oh, I feel so much better. No, it's not supposed to be like that. No, you supposed to actively practice healing yourself, and then chop it up with the therapist to kind of reflect on what your practices were and how you did, and da 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 da, and boom boom boom, and then the next chapter. This is it's a process. And again, I'm speaking. I haven't gone to therapy, but I'm just speaking for the people who are maybe on the fence and feel like, oh, maybe I should go. And it's not. You just have to make sure you have a good therapist. You know what I'm saying? Or again, so a lot of people watch videos for therapy if they know it or not. So even when you're watching certain videos, it's not just to watch the video. And this is kind of what, I don't know. My channel is going through. I'm going through transformation. So as a byproduct, my channel is going through transformation. So, but I would actually like that at some point in the comments, or, maybe not, maybe this is not the platform for it, but to get into active conversation where, we are working alongside each other to get to new places and stuff like that. Because even when I talk about the new moons, or the sun going into a new sign, it's like all of this is like, these are experiences we all going through. You know what I'm saying? I don't know where everybody going through, and nor do I probably have the capacity to know where what everybody going through. But you know, just for the people who really support and want to be a part of this community as well, let's chop it up. Let's keep it going. And stuff like that. But check-ins and all that. One day when things get structured and stuff like that. Yeah, structure is coming. And again, that's the thing too. You got to be honest with yourself about where you at with things. I think that's another really powerful thing kind of coming in with this new moon because it's under to understand to relate to something, you have to understand the reality of it. That's like the Saturn being exalted in Libra. So you can't relate to something you don't see the reality of. I'm not gonna say understand because you don't have to necessarily understand everything. It's Saturn is less about understanding. It's more about, um, it's more about, I don't know the right word, but Saturn is different than just trying to understand something. Saturn is just seeing the reality. It's the reality, it's how something works. That could lead to understanding, but it's more about functionality and execution and like structure and systems. So when you understand the functionality of something, how something functions in your life, or how you and another individual function together, or the systems that y'all are able to create. Because see, sometimes that's another thing too. You be wondering why our relationship failed. It's because y'all were not able to create a system that works for both to create balance. So the system was off. What I'm saying? I think that's kind of like the fundamental breakdown of it. The relationships that work are individuals that find a system that creates a healthy or a good exchange of value. You do this, you do that. That's why, like in a traditional sense, a man provides and protects, a woman nurtures, and what's the other one? I forget the word. I'm just spitballing right here. But in a traditional sense, I'm just, how you do your relationship dynamics is that. But I'm just saying, like in a traditional shit, the idea is the man provides the resources, the woman takes the resources and figures out how to organize them. The man goes out and gets all the material, the woman figures out how to organize it. The man builds, the woman puts the color and the aesthetics behind it and maps it out and what I'm saying, all of those different things. Hunter gatherer, the man goes out and hunt, the woman gathers it and distributes amongst the family or the community. Like it's systems, and I think that's why even today's relationships are so complicated because first of all, and honestly, I don't think it's just today. I think relationships have always been complicated. I think people highlighted, oh, today is like this, but I mean, we not again. Y'all wasn't back then. Y'all wasn't seeing what was going on. There's probably a lot of bullshit that was going on that people were saying the same thing, but just it wasn't online. It wasn't. Relationships been complicated. That's why. That's why you got so many goddamn half brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? That's why you got so many baby mamas. Or your father, your grandfather has so many kids from the fifth cousins and shit like that you never met. You know what I'm saying? Like relationships been complicated. This is not some new phenomena. I think humans is complicated. So when humans get with humans, it get weird. It can get weird. It doesn't have to be weird. But if you even look at the nature of Libra, communication makes it easier to understand. Systems make it easier to understand. Again, a person could come to you kicking some polyamory shit, and if they can make it make sense though, and they got a system, who are you to say that don't work? It might not work for you. People who are more monogamous, but either way, it's like nothing is too complicated for two individuals who are willing to kind of create or establish a system. And if the value in that system is properly exchanged, the relationship will be successful regardless. You know, that's how I'm understanding it to work. Kind of in real time, man. So that's what you have to understand. But understanding also that's the external, but also internally, you should understand a system for you. You got to understand your relationship with yourself depends on the system you got going on within you. A lot of individuals are walking around with poor relationships with themselves, aka poor systems, internal systems, aka anybody walking around here with an avoidant attachment style or a anxious attachment. They got all kinds of names and labels, but essentially these are nervous system malfunctions. based upon trauma, experience, or just fear, or, whether it's rational or irrational, regardless. These are nervous system. Again, system, that's the key word, right? So self-regulating, right? And part of self-regulating is just a form of creating a better relationship with yourself, creating a better system of value. If what you value, aka what you think you're getting out of a partner, is emotional security, there's times in which you have to, well, first of all, before you even, you should learn how to emotionally secure yourself based upon exchanging thoughts and feelings, jumping through thoughts and feelings you may have, or what you choose to focus on attention wise, even down to how you think about other people when they're not around. But this kind of goes to how you think about yourself. And some of us might feel like, oh, well, I'm confident. You could be confident, but still be fucked up self-esteem wise, still have a lot of issues as far as, and we all have valleys and peaks. We all have things that we feel like we're not strong in. And then we feel like other people could see us insecurities and things like that. But see, this is all part of just the more you know yourself, the more then you could become an active participant in healing yourself and creating better internal balance with what's going on inside of you. But it's all part of the game. And that's what you got to chalk it up to sometimes. It's just part of the game of life. You know what I'm saying? But I like this seeing a video saying this, and this is just I like to look at this like, man, to be alive is a privilege. Because yeah, it's a lot of bullshit that come with it, right? But damn, like every day to be able to get up, experience not only yourself, but other people too, other ideas, other ideologies, other systems, right? And that's another thing too, and see, all of these things get more and more complex the more and more groups of people is trying to come together and relate. So, but part of it is, knowing yourself, because that's all you really can do. But see, the beauty of it though, the more you know yourself, the more you can recognize where other people's systems might not be quite wired right. And then at that point, you can discern, do I want to keep this person in my life? Do I care to help them? Do they care to help themselves? That's important first. And then also, or is it better off that I just leave them to their own devices because I do not have the capacity to handle that? And that's the most respectable thing you can do for another individual sometimes, is leave them the fuck alone. Like let me leave you alone. Cause you gonna drive me crazy, you know what I'm saying? Or vice versa. So all in all, you know what I'm saying, it's a beautiful time. You know what I'm saying? It's a beautiful time. It's a lot of cool things that you know what I'm saying? It's a lot of deep, like I said, it's just the deepening. And for anybody kind of on your path, on your mission, just stay focused, man. Like do your best to focus. Getting back to that government stuff I was talking about too, about crypto and new systems being introduced. That's probably gonna be in a separate video. A lot of people also upset about AI, you know. Um, so it's a lot of things that might be dragging your attention here, there, everywhere, da 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 da. Um, and another thing I was gonna say too, even with the government thing, is that the two levels they're attacking really is like or not attacking it, but the ones that are being highlighted are, SNAP benefits, and then people employment. Employment has been the topic because all the people who were doing the government jobs not having a job, well, now they're looking for alternatives, right? But the interesting about it, and they're adding to the unemployment economy, or yeah, unemployment space, right? However you say. So what's interesting to me is that, okay, what's being kind of highlighted is I've been kind of thinking, and other people have said this before, but with the cryptocurrency, it's kind of like this thought or this idea that's been floating around. So I know it's kind of like it must be in the ethers, but it's like a certain reality that could happen where people are dependent on the government for a stipend distributed by some form of a cryptocurrency, right? Or some aspect of you having, whether it's not enough jobs, or kind of like even how the stimulus checks were, where they gave you a lump sum of money on a cycle, Only this time is going to be through some new kind of currency system and stuff like that. Like, look, I ain't trying to get into the conspiracy world because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like, I mean, I think certain things are interesting ideas and conversations, theories and conversations. So I'm willing to have a conversation, but I'm not here to, be in that conspiracy space. But I just think it's interesting because even in that, I'm not even saying it like it's something to be worried about, but it's something to understand. Like, meaning you need to figure out there's different skills. Like, first of all, you need to get your skill game up. You got to figure out what you here to do, your purpose, and whatever purpose it is that you choose, you need to start to incorporate, develop those skills that's going to put you in a certain space to be able to do those at at a higher level than others. I mean, and that is not even so much as others. I feel like actually you should get your skill up and then connect with others who got high skills is in different areas or the same. And then this is how you can kind of start to create a form of whether it's financial security, job security. In financial security is a lot more factors than just your skill set. But that's the thing. Skills and ideas make the world go around. Well, ideas make the world go around. So if you got the skill though, you can create you get like ideas should already be flowing. Ideas will come to you. You just got to make sure you're skilled enough to execute the idea properly. If so you get what I'm saying. So that's why you have to sometimes focus on the ability and the skill first because the idea gonna flow. Ideas constantly come and go. There's a lot of ideas that you had that probably was multi-million dollar ideas, but you didn't have the skill or the connections to get it off the ground. So that's why it's really about, I think the one thing that if you worried about all that stuff and oh, I'm not gonna have a job, if you trying to figure out your job situation or your career situation, focus on okay, what's your purpose? Have an idea of a purpose, even if you don't have a purpose. Start to work on skills and that skill and that ability. Get really good at that, get real intricate at that. And then as the ideas flow, and then also along with that, start to connect with people who either do the same thing or things that are adjacent, things that are complementary to whatever skill you learn. And so, for instance, if you know how to code and you a coder, get with somebody who also knows how to graphic design. Get with somebody who knows how to do 3D animation make those connections. All of a sudden, you can create a video game. If you know how to work a camera, get with somebody who either knows how to write scripts, get with somebody who likes to act. If you know how to make music, producing, get with somebody who raps well in your area. Get with somebody who sings very nicely. You like their music. And then the thing is, genuine connection, because that's another thing that's going to matter. You need to start to figure out who you like and be genuine. Don't just get with people because you're trying to get a check out of them. Get with people you like to be around because that's actually going to propel you forward. Because if y'all do get into business, guess what? You're not gonna mind kicking it with them every day, right? Now things change, people kind of shift and stuff like that sometimes, but that's on you. So sometimes you gotta, and when I say that's on you, I mean discernment. You got to know who you getting involved with. But this is why, again, even in that sense, connections should not just be limited to the first person you see or only the people in your neighborhood. Get out and meet some people. Get out and rub shoulders and stuff like that. Switch it up. Do something that's going to be a little nerve-wracking because the thing about it is the more you get used to that, first of all, that's part of growth anyway. You got to get up out of that comfort zone. You got to get out of that, out of your mind. Get up out of your mind, motherfucker. Get up out of your mind. It's cool. You know what I'm saying? It's nice out there. Honestly, being trapped in here is the worst thing you could do because reality is not in here. You know what I'm saying? Reality does not exist in here. Reality is everything else. So when you get lost in your mind, when you get trapped in your mind, you lose touch with everything. That's how all your relationships deteriorate at the same time. That's how all of your money goes to places you can't even recall. You ain't even got all the receipts for where your money went. That's how you lose touch with who you are too, because part of who you are is how you engage with the world. So if you trapped in the mind, you're not even being you. You just being what you think you are. And what you think you are is different than what you actually are, who you showing up as. But anyway, much love. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.